Let's get down to Avo, the marketing arm of Ash Brokerage Corporation, a practice enhancement company. All this week, it's news you can use. And on today's show, a long-term care update for October 2013. And with me today is nationally recognized long-term care expert, Maria Sarshi. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Backroom Technician. We're on location in Indianapolis, Indiana. Let's get down to business.
Well, welcome to the show, Maria.
Well, thank you, Steve. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I have to say, long-term care, it's been yin and yang. The market has totally contracted. We're down to about 6 to 8 carriers now. I mean, this is kind of shrinking since I've been in this thing 30 years. However, I've noticed a lot of people are becoming more aware of long-term care, and why? I've been writing on this on the net especially. The number one fear in retirement is running out of money because of what? Not so much the expense of long-term care, but because we're living so much longer. And now that we're living longer, assisted living is almost a guarantee we're going to be using it. And this is where we're looking at human longevity having an impact on a new resurgence in looking at long-term care. It's almost now, as a baby boomer, unavoidable. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, without a doubt, one of the greatest risks facing retirees and their families today is the potential for a care event. And we know, statistically speaking, that the longer we live, the greater the odds are that we will someday need care in some form. And yes, we have seen a constricted market in the standalone long-term care space, where 20 years ago we might have had 15 or 20 carriers. Today we're playing in a market with maybe 6 or 7 that are genuinely out there advocating for clients, advocating for their families, and truly putting wonderful solutions in play, which will help people at a time when they need it most. 20 years from now, 30 years from now, folks who are looking at care planning today are not folks who are needing it tomorrow or the next year. There's a long horizon.
I was looking at our final house that my wife and I are going to buy for retirement. 1 level.
Yeah.
Walk-in bathtub.
Yes.
I mean, I can't believe we have to think like this, but we have to start thinking. When I look at long-term care, most people, if they have the option, and I live in a huge retirement state of Arizona, I've noticed that a lot of people opt to stay at home for assisted living.
Without a doubt.
Is that the number one trend out there?
Without a doubt. And one of the greatest things that has happened in this country is that we've created some phenomenal awareness around what longevity looks like, how people prefer to be cared for. You work hard. All your life, people work hard to enjoy retirement. So we have such an obligation to go out and teach what kinds of tools and solutions are available to ensure that that happens, not only for the individual, but for their loved ones, to ensure that that family unit stays bonded and tight.
Now, I was reading one of these contracts and I noticed that they had a provision for caregivers so they could go on vacation and take a break. Talk about that, because I wrote on this and I had so many consumers calling me back and writing saying, Steve, I didn't know this existed.
Yes, there are so many wonderful things that are available to help families. Respite care is a great example. When you have a caregiver that is giving of themselves all year long, they too need a break. They too need a respite. So when you have tools in place to help the family, that kind of protection, that kind of break for the primary caregiver, it's there. It's one of the unspoken benefits about the proper type of care planning.
I've also noticed out on the web that there's been a change in the way we discuss long-term care. They're using more of this phrase, extended care.
Yes.
Have you noticed that change?
Yes, absolutely. You know, when you think about long-term care, not the greatest of images are conjured.
No, nursing home confinement,
without a
I
doubt.
can't move, I can't even go to the bathroom.
That is where the awareness evolution has been such a tremendous benefit. We are teaching and sharing that, look, care can be on your own terms. It can be in your own home. It can be in an assisted living facility. And with the right type of planning, years in advance, so many great things happen that put you in control later on at a time when you need it most.
Now, I've noticed a propensity among advisors, I've been in the business 30 years, that a lot of my advisor colleagues start introducing long-term care about age 50. But I don't see too many people buying it at age 50. What's your experience?
My experience is that we see a younger and younger age demographic looking and purchasing care planning tools.
Well, give me an age, because I'm
I
surprised.
certainly will. And I'd like to compare it, if I could, to when I began in this industry in the early 1990s. Then we were talking to clients who were 70 and above. As we transitioned into the early 2000s, we were talking to folks in their 60s. Today, without a doubt, clients in their early 50s. And the reason why is because they have had an experience. they themselves are probably the caregivers for their parents. And they're also that generation that's caring for children. So they see what the future can hold. And they can make smarter decisions today to help not only themselves, but their loved ones. And that too is something that we do not talk enough about. Its impact not only to the individual, but to their family and friends as well.
When you think of the baby boomer, we are the sandwich generation.
Yes.
We're in between our children with college tuition, helping them out with our millennial kids, and on the other side, we've been caring for our parents.
Yes.
And I have to say, the squeeze is on, and I can totally understand why. Age 50 now is now the good, not only looking at it, or at least being introduced to it, but purchasing it.
Without a doubt.
I noticed one issue that's going on. I've noticed that people who have family history with certain diseases or a predisposition to nursing home confinement are getting it even earlier because they already see it coming because there's strong genetic history here.
Yes. Let's go back to the awareness evolution. Okay, because what has happened is we have taught that when you have a family history, when there's been an experience, one of the first things we have to do is plan in advance. And so we know that health can deteriorate as we mature. And when we engage with clients, as they're looking at this type of planning, we want to talk about health conditions, medications that they're taking, so we're identifying the right path for them early on in the process.
In your understanding, because you see so much inbound traffic from so many advisors, do you think advisors are very up to speed on long-term care?
I think we have made great strides, by far. Again, if I look back at the 1990s and the early 2000s, it was not a topic that many were comfortable with. Today, because of all the awareness that's been put out there, we see a big difference.
Of course, there's extraordinary issues like continuing ed and all these things that have now really, there's another issue that you have to kind of overcome.
But it's important, and it is absolutely a must-have because you want to have the right advisors educating people on this type of planning.
And it is an education.
Absolutely.
When we come back from the break, we'll continue our long-term care update for October 2013 and some of the unique issues that are extended care during retirement. And you can request the long-term care material right from Backroom Technician at our website at www.downtobusiness.ashbrokerage.com or just sign up for their 30-day free trial offer for Backroom Technician at www.brtnow.com/trialsignup.aspx. We'll be right back after the break.
Take a close look at your hard-earned dollar. How do you think your money's doing? Are you keeping an eye on it? Is it protected from taxes, inflation, and market risk? Over time, those Washingtons could become Franklins. With tax-advantaged indexed universal life, from one of the largest distributors of indexed universal life, Ash Brokerage.
Welcome back. I'm Steve Savant with Maria Sarsi. And remember, you can watch all the episodes of Let's Get Down to Business, including my weekly consumer show, Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game, right at www.ashbrokerage.com. And just click on the show logo right on the home page. And remember, just before moving forward with anything that you ever hear on our show, always consult your tax advisor, your legal counsel, as well as your broker-dealer compliance officer. Well, let's get down to business. We're continuing our long-term care update for October 2013 and talking about some of the unique issues of extended care during retirement.
Well, welcome back to the second segment, Ria.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Well, I appreciate having a person that this is all you do. And how long have you been doing long-term care?
Since 1990. And yes, this is what I do day in and day out.
You are the morbidity maven, I have to say.
Well, nobody's ever quite called me that before.
Oh, yes. Well, if you come on my show, I'll have nicknames for you by the end of the segment. Well, let's just talk about a little bit. I love everything you're talking about. I see the inevitability of assisted living. I know it's going to happen when I get older. But is the cost prohibitive? And somehow, out on the net, everybody talks, the Googleites out there say, oh, this is just not worth the money.
Yeah, I hear that pretty regularly. And so one of the first things we have to do as we talk to a consumer about their options is to really start at phase one. Why care planning now? What has brought you to this point that we want to talk about? What event in your family has happened that's brought you to this? Most often we hear and learn that it's because they know somebody that's had an event. And so you ask about what those costs are. What what is it costing your family member? And you could hear anything from $6,000 a month, $12,000 a month. It varies all across the country. And so there's an understanding very early on that those monthly costs can really, really eat into all of your savings. And there's a whole emotional impact to it as well. But here we're talking about cost. When you can identify what the out-of-pocket expense could be in the high likelihood of a care event, you need to transition and be able to explain and show that there are tools today that will cost far less than that. So that if you have the care event, you'll get more benefit later on. Thereby you're spending less out of pocket.
Well, let's just talk about that for a second. I'm looking at, and I just happen to know this because I actually answered this on an illustration. So I have a male 60 years of age. He's buying full coverage. I noticed that he's going to lay down about $300 a month in his premium, and he's using an inflation rider just on top of that.
Sure.
So I noticed in his total benefit was like $7,000 a month and a total benefit of about $420K.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't use $7,000 a month because he's doing assisted living, which is much less, he still is going to have that cap option, right?
Yes.
Okay, so talk a little bit about how you just introduced us into, hey, it's not going to be this shock and awe, I'm going to a nursing home every time.
That's right.
So talk about it, because I think that helps people understand
Yeah.
the actual worth, the benefit of the
Yeah.
dollar spent.
And so it is a gradual, usually a gradual step. Care in the home, perhaps assisted living, and then ultimately it could wind up that the person is receiving care in a facility. So you might not access your full benefit each month, and it remains in what I like to call your resource pool. So you have more to tap into as you need it. And when you can help a consumer understand that they have control over that benefit pool, how they spend it down, and help them to identify how they can fund the premium for the creation of that benefit pool, it is an absolute win for that client. I say this to folks all the time. They don't know what they don't know. You need to educate, you need to teach about how these protection tools work. And once you go through the steps of explaining it, that cost issue really becomes a non-event.
Well, let's talk about cost for a moment on a whole new, what kind of, I know there's so many ancillary riders that you can
Yes.
attach to this. I mentioned one,
Yes.
cost of living or inflation.
Yes.
When you look at the price tag for premium, you say, here are a couple other ideas that are just a little bit more money, but the bang for the buck is so great. Give me a few of those riders.
Well, without a doubt, having some kind of an inflation rider on your policy is something that will help you grow that benefit pool, because if you're buying at age 50 and you probably won't need this until you're in your 70s or 80s, you want that benefit pool to grow along with you. So yes, the inflation option will cost more but provides a great benefit down the road. Some folks look at the standalone long-term care solutions. One of the things that are of concern to them is, well, what if I don't have that care event? What if I am in that 30%? So there are return of premium options that you can look at, which returns premium if you don't have a care event, but that does drive up the annual cost for that solution.
Well, let's just talk about that. From a strictly consumer point of view, because advisors are going to need that kind of language to
Yes.
speak to their client,
Yes.
is that worth it? Is the price you pay to get the return of premium in case you don't use it, is that worth the money over whatever period of time that I have to play?
Here's how I will answer that question, Steve, because the one thing that my years of experience have shown is that care planning brings peace of mind to individuals. And that peace of mind can be different from one person to the next. Where return of premium or access to that cash may be incredibly important to one family, it may not be to another. So when you begin your plan design, when you begin your research on what your care plan will look like, it's important to understand early on what the key benefits are for the client. What are they looking for? What's most important to them?
I've noticed the last nursing home I went into, it was 9-to-1 women. We're really, bottom line, the survivors of a marriage or partnership are going to be placed in the issue of a woman outliving her husband.
Yes.
And I'm wondering sometimes if we forget that there's an emotional connection of peace of mind from a financial point of view that may have its own internal or intrinsic value to money. Because we can't just look at this as a balance sheet item. Would you agree with that?
100%. 100%. When you talk to clients, when consumers look at care planning solutions, most of the reason why is because they're looking for that peace of mind. They don't want to put themselves or their family members in situations that they've heard about, all those terrible things that they've heard about, loss of control, loss of freedom, loss of independence. This is really an empowerment story. At its very root, care planning is an empowerment story. And if we could show and educate and people make an informed decision that's right for them, then everybody comes out ahead.
One last question. How old do you think I can go before, wow, I don't know if I should spend the money?
Again, it's a personal decision. Most options are cut off by age 79, so you can't buy it beyond that age. Yes. From an insurability standpoint, once you get into the late 70s, it can be difficult to qualify. But I will say this, every family should have the discussion. Every family should think about what their options are and make that informed decision.
Well, that's our show for today. Remember, you can read all my online insurance news commentary, advisor blogs, and articles on Producer's Web, as well as my answers to consumer questions on Insurance Library. And don't forget, you can watch and view all our past episodes on our on-demand section located at www.downtobusiness.ashbrokers.com. So don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or just email me, steve.savant@ashbrokerage.com. And remember, you could be wiser as an Ash Brokerage advisor.